All right, so I guess I chose to become a manual therapist because I had a real interest in the human body really young. I knew what I wanted to do, or at least close to what I wanted to do by about the age of 14, which is probably weird for a teenage boy. But I started out learning martial arts really young, and that got me fascinated with the human body. Had some really good mentors and teachers during that time. And I think that kind of set me up for wanting to know more about how the body works and how it breaks, and then how to put it back together as part of that process. So that's probably where I got started.
I guess I chose to be a myotherapist. I'd always been heavily involved in sport growing up, and there's a few injuries here and there. And when I was in college, I went to a physio clinic as part of a work placement, and I thought it was really cool what they did, and also again suffered an injury, and I was going through physiotherapy, and I found it to be really quite interesting. So I thought this would be a great career path as far as working within manual therapy, working with athletes and sporty people and people in pain. So that's sort of how I started out heading towards being a manual therapist.
I don't think I really know when I was 100% sure, but I absolutely know that there was times when I thought to myself, maybe I want to be a landscape gardener, maybe I just want to spend time outside, or maybe I want to be, something else. Like I just want to do something else, because there'll be times when it's tough and times when it's not tough. So I think probably more in the second half of my career, so in the last 10 years or so, there's been no question whatsoever that this is where I wanted to be. In the first half, I think there were times when I kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit, but yeah, I'm glad I stuck in there, because this is definitely what I'm meant to be doing.
And was I 100% sure? It's sort of gone up and down. I absolutely loved what I was studying, and being challenged, and then I was working with elite level athletes in Canberra. So I absolutely loved what I was doing. Then I sort of got to a point where I then thought about a career change, and I wanted to go and travel the world. And so I sort of left my job and went overseas. And when I was overseas, I always had sort of that interest that was still there. So I came back and went back into my old job, and really enjoyed what I was doing, which has then taken me all over the country. And I think, when I've been involved in education, it's really challenged me to take it to that next level. And I'm absolutely so passionate about what I do and learning more. So yeah, it's sort of gone up and down. I don't know if there was an exact point, but I'd say my passion has certainly increased as time has gone on.
I got started really basic level. I started with a Cert 4 in massage therapy straight out of high school. But I guess before that, because I knew what I wanted to do so young, I was doing PD courses when I was 15, 16 and 17, my latter teen years. I probably shouldn't have been in those courses, but I somehow got in there. And that kind of sparked my interest even more so from an early age. And so then, through my teens, even before I finished high school, I was treating people. I was, seeing the effect of this stuff. And then the Cert 4 was my first formal qualification. Went on to do a diploma, and then through other opportunities got a degree in musculoskeletal therapy, or now called myotherapy, postgraduate quals in education and exercise physiology. And so I think I just started with a small stepping stone, just kind of built up over time, but definitely followed the path of qualifications and topics and things that I was interested in, but I couldn't have possibly guessed what that was from the start. So it just kind of, I was led by my interest over time, and obviously early on in my career got the opportunity to get into education, taught at colleges and universities, and then loved that, and then eventually got back into that purely into the professional development space, so teaching courses like we do at ACE. And now do that full-time in conjunction with a little bit of private practice. And that's seems to be the greatest balance I've ever had in my professional career. I absolutely love every day of it.
Started out studying sport development. That was as soon as I left college, I went into this qualification and decided it wasn't really for me. I didn't really want to be a sports coach. I had a lot more interest in musculoskeletal anatomy and sort of taking that to another level as far as understanding biomechanics and how that may influence someone's pain or their injury. So then I went and studied soft tissue therapy in Canberra, which sort of led me down a path of working with athletes and working with sport. I then sort of developed an interest in teaching. I was running some mobility workshops, and obviously I have a background in strength and conditioning as well, so I was doing a lot of strength and conditioning training. Then I thought, well, I want to get more in front of more people and teach other people how to do this sort of stuff. So I ended up getting a job at the college that I studied at, just working at reception for the clinic. So I thought if I could be in that environment, then when a teaching role comes up, I'm gonna be there ready to go. That didn't work out, so I ended up moving to Brisbane for a teaching role. And then, that led me to move to Perth for a course coordinator role, which led me to ACE for a full-time role teaching professional development courses nationally. So it's sort of one thing led to another, but I put myself in that position to really take it to the next level, and I guess sort of try to get outside of that comfort zone initially. Now I am a huge nerd, and I'm also studying educational neuroscience to have a further understanding of teaching and how the brain works.
Yeah, I think there's probably two parts to the challenges that I see in the work that I do. So from a clinical perspective, treating patients, the biggest challenge or the biggest hurdle for me is getting the patient from A to B without them wanting to go somewhere completely different. You know what they need to do, you know the advice they need, the things they need to do to get the results they want, but they don't always want to do that. And I think over time, early in my career, I would often get frustrated because they keep coming back with the same problem and they weren't following the advice. I knew my advice was right, at least close to it. And I think over time, I've come to realize that maybe the patient has to decide for themselves, but also we get better at explaining them the reasons for the advice that we're giving. And I think the better we get at that, the more likely the patient is to follow that advice and do those things and get the results they want. So it's kind of a challenge, but it's also something I think we get better with over time. From an education side of things, my biggest challenge, or the thing that I struggle with the most is, there's only 7 days in a week and I've got 10 days worth of stuff to do every week. I want to build so much, create so much, put so much out there and try to educate so many people, but there's not enough hours in the day. So for me, it's a little bit of frustration around having really big goals, but having to extend the timeline for all those goals to play out. So it's a challenge, but I still love doing it every day.
The biggest challenge for me clinically is when you see a patient who has already been to 3 or 4 different practitioners and you're sort of the last option, and they've already got a lot of preconceived beliefs and understanding around what's going on, and using communication to facilitate change without sort of overstepping it. I think that's a real challenge, and it's something that I'm still working on. But as I've gained more experience, I've gotten better with communication and really allowing that to drive the conversation, understanding their thoughts and beliefs and all of that's associated with someone's pain presentation. I think that can be a real challenge when they're very set in their ways and they've had chronic pain for X amount of years, and we've got to try to sort of peel back those layers and see if we can change those unhelpful beliefs and get them on the process towards recovery. I think that's a real challenge. And then from the teaching side of things, when you've got different learners at different levels in a room, and you've got someone that may not be disengaging with the content, trying to bring them up at the same time as giving out content that's relevant to different levels. I think that can be a real challenge when you've got a big group of learners.
Okay, so most satisfying, I think, again, from a clinical perspective, easily the most satisfying thing is when you see that moment where the patient's eyes go, now I understand. Like you've spent the time to gather that history and do the assessment and really dive deep into their problem. And then you spin that around and put it back to them in the way that makes them or helps them recognize why they have this situation going on for them, and that there is an opportunity to move out of that situation. And it gives them a sense of hope and positive outlook on things. That's absolutely the most satisfying thing from a clinical perspective. From a teaching, from an ACE perspective, just the opportunity to impact so many people. Like we, as a teacher, and this goes for teaching in any industry, you get to influence a room of people. Let's just say there's 20 people in that room. Those 20 people go out and influence their patients. Those patients' lives improve, their family relationships improve, their health improves. So you influence 20 people, that multiplies every time you step into a classroom. So the opportunity to leave a positive footprint on the earth through education and passing on these things that we learn along the way, nothing more satisfying than that.
I think the most satisfying thing about my job clinically would be when a patient tells you that you have helped to change their life. When they may have had persistent pain for years and years, and the advice that you've given them and empowered them to really change their life, I think that's really satisfying and really rewarding. From a teaching point of view, when students ask questions, I really like that. It's really quite satisfying to see that they are thinking and they are wanting to know more about a particular topic. And then, in follow-ups, when they'll come back and tell you how effective that training was and the results that they've now got with their patients as a result of that, I think that's really quite rewarding that can be passed on to students and then down to their patients.
Yeah, right. So the advice I'd give a beginner would be just know that it'll take a lot longer than you think it should. Like you'll think, oh yeah, I'll be good at this in 12 months, or I'll be good at this in 2 years' time, or I'm going to have a booked clinic. I'm going to be packed in my client list within X amount of months or years. Hope for it to be sooner, but expect it to take longer. So patience is absolutely the key.
My advice to someone who's starting out would be, firstly, to ask as many questions as you can. Don't think that you know it all. Listen to podcasts, read as many research papers, read textbooks, do as much education as you can for a long period of time. That would be my key advice. Knowledge is power, and also, get involved in a sports club or a team or something where you can get a little bit of extra experience and input from other practitioners, and that can really help to support and facilitate your learning.
So motivation behind ACE for me, or starting ACE, was really, I guess it was a natural progression of being in education and clinical practice. I saw an opportunity to be able to teach things that I knew worked, that I'd had my own experience with and seen good results with, and I thought that so many therapists out there could potentially benefit from that as well. I also saw an opportunity to do things a little bit differently. There's often a little bit of a negative feeling towards education organisations, that it's all about the money and it's all about just churning through and pumping out practitioners. And I think that there's so much more to it than that. And I think there's an opportunity to create created an environment where people can come in and learn things and be supported and encouraged. And it's not just a factory. We actually care. We care a lot, probably too much, about producing really good quality outcomes for the people that come and participate in our training. And so trying to build a different machine that people can participate in, that breaks a few of the rules and does things a little bit differently. And that's been so satisfying for me. And so starting ACE and building the team of people around it now, Bo and the rest of the crew that support that, has been massively rewarding for me. And I can just see it kind of progressing over time, and so many opportunities are going to come for us to be able to do more with it. So that's really exciting.
Well, when I started with ACE, I was very lucky that I had attended quite a number of Shaun's courses before, and I really enjoyed the way that they were run, and the focus on the learner, and there was a lot to gain from it. So I was very lucky and fortunate to be able to learn from Shaun and shadow Shaun, and still have him as a mentor, and we can bounce a lot of questions and ideas off each other. And I think we've really used that to grow the business, and understand what practitioners enjoy and what they like, and really have much more of a person-centered focus. So I think that's been really key, and I think that's a real standout for ACE.
So the end game, that's the big question, is like, where to from here? What do we ultimately want to achieve? From a clinical perspective, I'd still love the opportunity to be able to continue to treat patients on a regular basis. While I'm not in the clinic as much as I used to be, doing the numbers that I used to be, I still enjoy that. So being able to get the opportunity to sit down one-on-one with a patient with a problem, help them solve that problem and help them walk through that solution, I still want to do that forever. My big goal for ACE is ultimately to just leave this profession better than I found it. I don't know, a better way to put that is just, I've got some really big goals of things that I'd like to build for our industry, for our profession, and things I'd like to contribute. And I want to have a lot of fun doing that along the way. But at the end of the day, I want to look back and go, yeah, I gave it a really good crack. I gave it everything I had, and I think things are better because of that. So no regrets, and just being able to look back and go, yeah, we made an impact and it was positive.
I don't think there's really a limit on where we can take this. The more people that we can educate, that can then educate others, and grow the profession as a whole. I'd love to be able to take this overseas, and have people teaching this stuff all over the world, and educating more and more therapists. So I think we're in the early days at the moment, and as passionate as we are, I think that this is really going to grow and be something really quite exciting.